Hello again, everyone. I'm Steve Beverly, and here we are again with a second very special edition of Jackson 24/7, a continuation of yesterday's memories of how the Carl Perkins Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse all came together. And I have Pam Nash, the director of the center, with me again. And Pam, as we're going to hear more of in these stories today, there were some difficult roadblocks that these people that came together, the Exchange Club and so many of the other community leaders, they had a lot of roadblocks to make this happen.
They really did, and I think it's so special that they never gave up, because what if one of them had decided, oh, this is just too much trouble? But they didn't, Steve. They kept working and working and working and trying and jumping through all the hoops to make it happen. And because of these individuals, a lot of children's lives have been changed and many lives have been saved.
I lost my father back in October of last year, but he was a longtime Exchange Club member, and I will tell you that he mentioned to me many times that whereas Jackson, Tennessee may not be on the map in a lot of other portions of the country, Exchange Club members all over America know about Jackson, Tennessee because of this center here. And of course, his club was very involved also in doing things because it's a project nationally for Exchange Clubs to deal with child abuse prevention. And I always thought it was interesting. He said, oh, we know about Jackson, Tennessee and that center up there. And I think it's a tribute and a testimony not only to yourself, but to all of these people who paved the way for it to be what it has become.
That's right. And there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. I've heard stories how they would have to go out and borrow money. The board members would have to sign their own name on the notes to be able to pay the staff and to keep the doors open. And Governor Lamar Alexander, to even license the center, had to go outside of the state of Tennessee to make that happen. So a lot of people went above and beyond to make this center become a reality. And everyone that was involved in any way should be honored, because this has really, truly impacted the community.
Well, today we're going to bring together Henry Harrison, Polly Carter, Ken Brasfield, and the legend herself, now a member of the Radio Hall of Fame, Doris Cousin Tooney Freeman, and they're going to tell their memories of how the progression was when there wasn't a center to the day when they finally could open the doors and do the things that are so necessary to help the terrible problem that we have with child abuse, and this and any other community in America. When we come back, Pam's going to lead the conversation once again. She's going to start the ignition, and then all the rest of them are going to they're going to take it off and they'll be the engine. We'll be back with all of those memories right after this on Jackson 24/7.
Always on the go? Take your TV with you. Visit eplusbroadband.com and click on TV Everywhere to get started.
Nobody knew that the name of the first center in Jackson was to be named SCAN.
That's right. Suspected
Child Abuse and Neglect. And to come back with that vision and tell us that they just wanted us to raise money every year to fund it and support it. James said it was just being naive and starting a new business, but it was a fantastic approach that has reached almost an enthusiastic response of the entire population of Tennessee. And it has grown to that over the many years. And so that was fun. I do think we need to remember that it was begun by a lady named Sharon Pallone, who had entered into an agreement with the National Exchange Clubs of America to build a SCAN child abuse center in Nashville, Little Rock, and in every city in the United States that had an exchange club. Part of the challenges to us in raising the money is we didn't have any of the background on these people, and consequently that was really a challenge. And when Carl was finally asked if he would come in and we would name it after him, it provided sort of a local personality.
Yes.
With power and strength, and we could support it and unite behind Carl and his prestige and his power. And that actually, I think, was when it mushroomed into the magnificent organization and has the enthusiastic response of most people in the state of Tennessee today.
I agree. I agree.
Who was Henry's ghostwriter? Because I know he just didn't create that himself. Someone had to do that for him.
He did pretty good, didn't he?
Yeah. But,
Well, I know this. There would not be a center if it wasn't for Polly Carter. Polly was in the national board, and Polly came here put the bit in her mouth, and she was, and Polly had been so kind and wonderful to me on many occasions, and she had helped us out in the cerebral palsy telethons. And I was at Union, the old Union campus, the day we cut the ribbon with the redcoats, the ambassadors, Chamber of Ambassadors. In fact, I think I was around when Columbus hit the rock. but anyway, and so Polly, and then Carl, of course, Carl had done the cerebral palsy telethons with me, appeared with me with the children. And so Polly called me and she said, I want to take you to lunch. And so she took me to lunch at the country club, and we were talking. She said, well, I want to ask you something. She said, we want to do a telethon. And I said, I think that's great. And she said, but Carl won't do it without you. And I said, oh, Carl can do, well, he won't do it without you. So the ball's in your court. If you won't do it, it won't happen. Of course, she backed me into a corner. And I said, well, I can't turn Carl down. And I can't turn down the reason for the telethon. Because all of us have been abused one way or another all our lives. That's part of growing up, I guess. But so that's how it all happened. And the thing that really clinched it for me, Polly invited us over to her house for lunch, and she showed this film, and it was classified. And one of the pictures of the children that came up that was abused went to the Cerebral Palsy Center, and it just blew me away when I saw that little boy that had cerebral palsy, and he had been abused. And it just, man, of course I was going to do it anyway, but I'll never forget the very first one that we did the whole thing. It was 4 hours. Well, the first one was the break in and out of the African Queen. Well, but the very first was of the straight time was 4 hours, I think, from 2 to 6. And Carl said just before he went out, he was going to go out first and then introduce me, and I was coming out. And Polly had of course, Polly can organize, Polly always, she always remembered 3 things. First, you got to organize, then you got to deputize, then you got to supervise. And that's Polly's motto. I love this young. And Carl said, I'm sick at my stomach. I think I'm going to throw up. I said, don't you dare, not till after this is over. Polly said, you're not going to do that. He was so, of course he was apprehensive, not knowing, I said, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Because these are also God's special children. Okay. And if you just help one, it's worth a lifetime of effort. And we think about the thousands, the mega thousands of families that have been put back together, and which is it's unbelievable, because somebody, if you know that somebody cares and somebody is there for you, that's the whole thing. And you know, I guess that the center is just like a warm fuzzy. It's like a big old teddy bear, and you just can hug it, and you know everything's going to be all right. And that's the most important thing. And as far as the Exchange Club is concerned, it's been very dear to my heart since I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, that's a long time ago. When I was 10 years old, George and Elizabeth Smith carried me to Memphis, and Jimmy Allen, and I sang and tap danced on the roof of the Peabody for the National Exchange Club Convention. I will never forget that as long as I live. That was in 1935, I don't know, 1935. And it was during the Depression, sort of, and so I never forget the national president's wife laid a $10 bill in my hand. I'd never seen a $10 bill. I almost danced off the roof, you know. That was a pretty good, a lot of money then. But it was, and so I've always been, they've always been special. The Exchange Club's always been special. And of course, I'd do anything for this young one here, and she would for me. We're connected at the hip. We're connected, cuz.
You know, cuz, that's interesting about Carl getting sick and not making it. When we did the first telethon, Ann Jensen had arranged to show the African Queen.
Yeah.
And give us the 2-minute commercial time to talk, and Carl was going to come and talk and raise the money. The Exchange Club had the telephone set up and people manning them. We got ready to go on the air, and Carl was sick, throwing up, and he did not come. They started walking around and said, look, they're not here and we've got to go on. You've got to do this. You have to do this. And amazing, we did raise around $10,000 out of that first telethon.
Right.
And it was a big day for the center in those days.
That's right.
So it was good to do that. But those are precious memories.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And Carl and I had a lot of experiences, and he, I don't know, somehow or another, we just knew what the other one was going to say. I don't know. We worked together for so many years. And, of course, I worked with Carl on stage many, many years ago. And he was a great guy. But the thing about Carl that a lot of people don't think about is we don't think about Carl as being an international star, but he is. He still is. He will always be, because Carl. You see, the difference between a star and a performer is a star does not let the spotlight blind them, and a performer does.
What we have here at Union is the unusual combination of high-octane intellectual challenge with, at the same time, a deep and abiding and robust commitment to intellectual discipleship, to being disciples of Christ who love God with not only our bodies and our souls and our strength, but also with our minds.
We continue with our panel on the history of the Carl Perkins Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse.
I think the first telethons we did after the African Queen, that it wasn't so much, it was to raise money, but it was also to inform, because the people didn't really know what we were doing or why. And I think we're still need to inform people that we don't keep kids, and these parents we work with, if they just need, I remember I was one of my first cases, that I went to court with my client, and she was a hard-looking little blonde, and she was just shaking and all, and she was just going. She had a DUI that was just being reduced to a reckless driving or something, but she was shaking and carrying on. But she told me after she never had anybody to be on her side. And so and I know I called her one day and she said, I knew it'd be you because nobody else would be thinking about me.
That's good.
So that's kind of what the parent aides did, or the volunteers. They just took care of the parents, because child doesn't need, you know, the attention of the volunteer. There may be 3 children. They need the proper attention of their parents. And so that's why I've stayed involved. And I know, like, when we raise money now, I know where it goes. With Dina and with Pam, that, you know, it goes to the right place.
That's good.
So, you know, that's why I tell people
Good.
to give money to the center, because it, you know, it does help the families that we work with.
I want to tell you, before I started this thing, Polly and I talked a long time before we got into this years and years ago. And I said, Polly, when anybody abuses a child, you just want to hit them. She said, no, 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 no. So she was the first qualified, certified instructor. Yes, and there was 12 hours, was it 12 hours? I think 12 hours of training. And I took that training before we did the telethon. I took that training, and she was my professor. And she did outstanding. And she made me a PhD. Of course, that stands for post-hole digger. But then she... Love this gal.
She was my professor, too.
Yeah.
Let me speak about Ken for just a moment. He was one of the strengths on the board of directors. At that time, we were really challenged to raise money. Wesley Grace had bought the hut, and he agreed to give us the money from opening day if we could get Carl to come down. Isaac Tigert had agreed to give us the money from his opening day when he opened a place in the mall. Nobody knew we were having to pay for those remote broadcasts. The last one, Ken paid for the Exchange Club, Carl Perkins Center, to have at the mall when Isaac Tigert opened his place here. Those things of the strength and the quietness, but of men going together in a unique manner to develop the center is so special today.
You know, it's taken thousands of people to make this happen, and we get on camera but when you think of the hundreds of people it takes to put on a telethon, plus the fact that the basic thing is the structure of the board that really puts it all together. It's amazing, which goes to show you, in this great country, you can do anything if you set out to do it in the right way.
That's exactly right. And there are angels among us since the beginning and continue to be. And I just thank you all for what you have done to make the center what it is today, because it would not be what it is if it weren't for y'all.
Well, Carl and I had a pact that whoever died first, the other one would keep going until they got fired. And I thought it would be me because I was older. And the last time I saw him alive, I took his hand and I went in intensive care, and he said, I said, boy, you got to get up out of that bed. We got a telethon to do. And he said, no, Toonie, you remember, you're going to do it. And I said, well, I've got to have you. He said, I'll be there, but you're going to do it. So Carl is with us. I believe that with all my heart, because he will always be with us. And I told him, I said, well, if anybody could get permission from God, you could do it and be with us in spirit. And he is. And I am, and I'm humbled as I'm honored to be a part of this and to have been a part of it all through the years. And, you know, as long as I'm kicking, I'm going to be there. With the good Lord willing, the creek don't rise.
Let me inject one other thing, if I may, Pam. In the fundraising, one of the things we did, Gene Smith, married to Dr. Clyde Smith, called and said, one of the ways you can raise money we've done before is have a doctors versus the lawyers basketball game. I said, sounds interesting, Gene. What do we do? So she broke it all out. You got all the wives to be the cheerleaders. And we had had 2 years in a row, the Healers versus the Steelers in a basketball game. Sally Rainey and all the ladies brought out their cheerleading costumes. Ray Mears came from the University of Tennessee. Dana Kirk sent one of the guys from the University of Memphis to be the coaches. We raised about $5,000–6,000 a year. The second year, there was so much combat. They said, we'd better stop this. This has become antagonistic. We're going to hurt somebody, and he's going to have to heal us, and they're going to have to sue us. So we stopped that. But we lost the $5,000–6,000 a year from it. Then we did the Roscoe Tanner tennis tournament out at the Jackson Country Club. Roscoe had been a ranked tennis pro and was a coach later at the University of Tennessee. Well, I called Carl and said, Carl, we're going to do this. I want you to come over. And he said, Henry, I'll come, but I've never been to the country club. And I said, well, why not? No one ever asked me. So I said, well, you're being asked now. So Carl agreed to come to the tennis tournament. And the last fundraiser that I recall, Carl said, Henry, Dr. Bob Souter has called, and he wants to do a fundraiser in his home for the center. I'll go, but I would like for you to go in case they ask some questions that I would prefer you answer. I said, okay, I'll meet you there. We were there about an hour, and Carl walked back in, and he said, can you believe this? They have handed me hands full of checks made out to the Carl Perkins Center for the Prevention of Child Abuse. We don't have to worry anymore. Without Carl's entry into it, I can hardly believe it could have been the success that everyone united has made it into today. I still honor him, and I think in some way the spirit of Carl is still there.
I do too.
That guides us and helps us continue.
Absolutely. Okay, any final words? All righty.
Well, before we leave, what I'd like to do, since a lot of us are here, I'd like for you to talk about the Red Ribbon experience that you had, because I think for this, it'll bring it full circle. So if you could talk to us about what happened to you.
We've got 5 minutes.
We got 5 minutes. Oh, she can do it in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Because of everything that you all have done, a lot of lives have been changed, and you never know who you're passing on the street that because of what you believed in and what you started has affected their life. And I'm a member of the Ambassador Redcoats, and I went to a ribbon cutting one day, and you know, I was holding one side of the ribbon, and after the ribbon cutting, I rolled it up and I turned around and I handed it to the owner of this wonderful business. And I said, you know, congratulations, we're glad you're here. I'm Pam Nash with the Carl Perkins Center. And she said, I know who you are. And I said, you do? How do you know who I am? And she said, because I'm so-and-so. And it was a little girl that was one of the worst cases I'd ever had.
Oh.
She and her siblings, the parents came up to my office one day and said, "Here are my children. We cannot take care of them anymore. I want you to take them." And these children were crying, "Mommy, please don't leave me. Daddy will be good." And it was a bad situation because the whole family was dysfunctional. There were a lot of things going on. And here she was standing in front of me. And she says, "I remember being in your car. I remember you helping me." And I said, "I have prayed for you and your family. That was one of the worst days of my life." And she said, "It might have been the worst day of your life, but it was the best day of mine, because I was with family that taught me I could do anything I wanted to do." And she said, "And this is my little girl who looked just like her at that age." And she said, "Because of what the center has done, she will never have to know or live the things that I had to live." And so the center has made a difference in my life, my siblings' life, and my children's life. And that's just one of 1,000. And she said, "You know, there are thousands of us out there. You pass us every day and you don't even know who we are. And it's because of you all that were there making a difference, making it happen, seeing a vision and wanting to change children's lives." And that's exactly what has happened these years. So thank you very much for being such an important part.
Just goes to show you that 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember our names, what we did or what we had, but the world's going to be different, and it's going to be better because we were important in the life of a child.
Always on the go? Take your TV with you. Visit eplusbroadband.com and click on TV Everywhere to get started.
Pam, I was in the control room while you were leading that conversation the entire time. This was not just for me, somebody who moved here in 1990. This was not just the history of the center. This was almost a living history of the last 25 years of the 20th century in Jackson.
Yes, it is, and it's something that we will value forever, to be able to have that, to show those that come after us, to be able to share with those that we interviewed their families. Yeah. And for them to have that, to be able to watch it a few times and just remember, because we all need to remember all the hard work that everybody put into making this center what it is today.
The easy thing is when we get on in a place such as yours is successful in doing a difficult job, is to remember those people who came before those who are there today doing the work in all the counties that you're in.
That's right.
Because as I've told so many of my students who want to go into this field, there were people who did things to pave the way for you to go in the doors that you go into in your careers in the future. And it's been a joy for me because these people, they knew this history and they lived it.
They did. They
Pam,
sure did.
Thank you so much for all those conversations, those great memories, and we'll be seeing you again very soon here on Jackson 24/7.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much.
And we invite you to join us again for our next edition of Jackson 24/7. And until we're with you then, this is Steve Beverly saying, as usual, so long from the great hub city of West Tennessee.